Hello, how are you?
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm fine. You're calling us from Hawaii. Well, there's been some interesting occurrences happening up in the universe. Can you kind of bring us around the clock to where you are now? Last time we talked, you've been working on the unified field theory. You've been working on the mathematics. Where are we now, and how do we stand concerning your discoveries and what you've discovered for all of us?
Well, I'm getting prepared to publish, and so I'm really excited. It's going to happen next few weeks, and, it's looking very good. All the math are working, all the preliminary peer review we've done look good, and so we're really excited. We're able to now, give a coherent, unified picture of the way the universe create and how we ended up where we are. And I think it's really crucial at this time in history to understand more of the fundamental structure of the universe.
Now, how can you characterize for our listening audience visually with your language how you would explain the mysteries that we are encountering, how the unified field theory is going to help illuminate for all of us this existence that we're in?
Okay, in general, and this is really in a simplistic way of saying it, what has happened throughout the ages in physics is that the origin of spin or the origin of angular momentum was never appropriately described, meaning that if you go to a physicist today and ask him or her, what is making the Earth spin? What is making the solar system spin? What is making the galaxy spin? What's making our local clusters of galaxies spin? Or what is making the atoms spin or the subatomic particles spin? They won't be able to answer that question. And that's really amazing because that is a fundamental question to the mechanics of creation, meaning that if something does not spin, if something does not have angular momentum, it does not radiate, and it becomes, it's not apparent to our reality. So, for instance, an atom needs to have spin in order to radiate energy. Everything in the universe needs to spin in order to be in existence. If a planet suddenly stops spinning, it would explode, or a sun, or a galaxy. So angular momentum spin is really fundamental to existence, and yet nothing in our current physics really describe where that is all coming from. Where is the energy coming from to create that spin, to create that angular momentum? And really, quantum theory is a whole theory that was developed in the early 1900s, late 1800s, because we couldn't really explain, well, there's the black body radiation problem, but as well because we weren't really able to explain where the electron takes its angular momentum, takes its spin. So instead of looking for that, instead of looking for an appropriate answer, we kind of took a shortcut, a runaround, and we invented a whole theory that just assumes the initial spin of the electron, predicts somewhat accurately the first orbital, and generates the Bohr hydrogen atom, and then from there, all the rest are approximations. Well, doing this may work for a certain amount of time, but eventually you still run through all sorts of problems, and then all sorts of complexity develop because you don't really have a fundamental answer to where the energy comes from to create all this spinning dynamics in the universe.
I'm afraid a lot of us just fell off the cliff on part of what you just said, but hold on for a second. What I redeemed from some of that, though, was, for example, in our first conversation, you had mentioned the idea, and it kind of brings the mind of, we hear that the universe is accelerating in its expansion.
Yes.
And you explained that one of the reasons this could be occurring is because the universe is imploding or imploding back into itself, which would explain why it would be speeding up, because the gravity would in fact be kind of like whipping itself back within itself, and that maybe if part of the universe is imploding and back into itself, and like you said, it's a curved open loop concept, that that's maybe an example of why things spin, because we're kind of generating our own gyro motion within our own motion.
That's right. That there is an expansion and a contraction side to the universe that are occurring simultaneously, and that might sound like a contradiction in terms, but imagine a donut. In a donut, you could say, if you could roll a donut onto itself, if the donut was flexible, it could be like, for instance, a pipe that is rolling onto itself. You would have a point in which, if you place a point on the donut, the point would go towards the center as you roll.
Yes.
And then out the bottom side and out.
Yes.
And you could say that the point is going towards contracting at the top, and then when it comes out of the hole and on the bottom part, that it's expanding towards from the center. So the fact that the universe contracts and expands at the same time can topologically be described in terms of a torus or a donut.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so it's not so voodoo all of a sudden. You start to see the dynamics of the universe as the structure of a donut, where there's an expansion part, and there's a contraction part. And it is a continuous cycle, and the two, contraction and the expansion, generates the dynamics of spin, generates the dynamics of torque, and that's how we solved it. We showed that space-time itself is imbued by a force that forces things to spin, just like water going down the drain.
Mm-hmm.
And you can imagine, like, for instance, that the top of the donut, the top of the torus, as it's going down towards the middle, is curling, just like water goes down the drain when you pull the plug on your bathtub, and that when it goes down the drain, it doesn't just curve, which creates gravity, which is what Einstein found, but it curls, it's twisting, and it forces objects to twist with them, with space-time itself. So we are showing the origin of spin to be space and time itself, just like gravity was shown by Einstein to be the result of space and time itself curving along the sides of objects.
You read my mind, because I was thinking that I remember years ago, it was Edgar Cayce in one of his dream states had looked into this particular century that we're now in, and he saw at one point or another tubular kind of vehicles that were going to be traveling above the earth without wheels, and his view was that it was a form of gravity, a form of us capturing gravity in some manner and utilizing it as an ultimate form of energy.
Yes.
And he saw vehicles literally traveling using gravity.
That's right. And you can imagine that all of a sudden, if space and time, which creates gravity, as Einstein showed in his beautiful equations, if all of a sudden space and time has a force in it that makes it spin as well, then we may be able to engineer devices that tap into that torque or that torsion force to generate gravitational field and energy and all sorts of very amazing technologies that could launch our society to a whole new level of existence.